New York City, March 2003, 2:47 a.m. Mariah's phone buzzed on her nightstand, pulling her from restless sleep where she'd been dreaming about something she couldn't remember, something uncomfortable that left her feeling watched. The number was blocked, which happened sometimes. Fans or tabloids who'd gotten her number somehow. But the message was just 3 words and a link. "They're watching you." Her first instinct was to delete it. Assume it was spam or paranoia fuel from someone trying to mess with her. But something about the timing, the hour when nobody legitimate would text, the simplicity of the message made her pause. Against every instinct screaming not to click random links, she clicked it. What loaded on her screen made her blood run cold. Security footage from her own recording studio, but angles she'd never seen before. Cameras positioned in places she didn't know cameras existed, covering blind spots she'd thought were private. Vocal sessions she'd had in private, moments she'd thought were just her and her producers, all time-stamped and cataloged with clinical precision. Creative session 9:15:02, personal call 11:22:02, production meeting 02:18:03. Each clip labeled, organized, archived like she was some kind of research specimen. Who had access to this footage? Who'd been cataloging her life like this? And more importantly, why were they showing it to her now? What had changed that made someone decide to warn her? Before she could process what she was seeing, her phone buzzed again. Same blocked number. Check your contracts. Check everything. Trust nobody. The messages deleted themselves 3 seconds after he read them, text vanishing like it had never existed, leaving no trace. And she was left sitting in the dark of her bedroom, heart pounding hard enough she could hear it, wondering if paranoia was finally catching up to her, or if something much worse was happening. By 4 a.m. she was in her home office, pulling every contract from the past 5 years. Most looked normal, standard legal language. Then she found it on page 47 of a 2001 contract. Behavioral monitoring for quality assurance purposes. What did that mean? She found more in other agreements, always buried. 17 contracts total, giving unnamed parties permission to observe, record, and analyze her conduct. All negotiated by her old business manager. Why couldn't she remember exactly why she'd fired him? Her phone rang. Her lawyer, way too early. "Mariah, we need to talk. I just got served with a cease and desist from your label. They're claiming you violated contract terms, threatening to freeze your accounts unless you sign a new agreement by Monday." Mariah hadn't discussed anything with anyone. What terms? They won't say. They keep citing Section 47 subsection C of your 2001 master agreement, which doesn't exist in the version I have. Ice in her stomach. So either they're bluffing or there's a contract you've never seen. Exactly. "Mariah, did you sign anything in 2001 that I didn't review?" Mariah thought back through the fog of exhaustion and breakdown from that period. "I don't know. I signed a lot of stuff." "Not past me," her lawyer said carefully. "Past both of us." Mariah's signature on things she didn't remember. Who handled those documents? Her old business manager. The same guy who negotiated the surveillance clauses. By afternoon, she'd tracked the manager to a modest house in Westchester. Modest for someone who'd handled millions in contracts and negotiations, which immediately raised red flags. Mariah sat in her car across the street for 20 minutes, watching the windows, the quiet suburban street, wondering what she was walking into. Finally, the front door opened, and there he was, older looking than Mariah remembered, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. When the guy saw Mariah walking up his driveway, his face went white. "Mariah, I can't talk to you. I signed an NDA, I know." Mariah cut him off, not slowing down. "But here's the thing. I've got surveillance footage from my own studio that you helped install. 17 contracts with monitoring clauses you negotiated. So either you tell me what's really going on, or I go to the press with what I have and let them connect the dots back to you. And we both know where that ends." The manager looked around nervously, scanning the street like someone might be watching even here, even in this quiet neighborhood. "Come inside. You don't want to have this conversation where they can see." They? Who was watching the watchers? Mariah followed him into a house that felt temporary, transient, like a way station rather than a home. Bare walls, packed boxes stacked in the corner, minimal furniture. Someone ready to run at a moment's notice. "How long have they been watching me?" The manager poured coffee with hands that shook slightly. Took a long time to answer, like he was calculating how much to reveal, how much he could safely say. Since 1998, maybe earlier, I'm not sure. I came in when the operation was already running, just took over the contract negotiations, the legal framework. What operation? Mariah's voice was harder now, patience wearing thin. You want the corporate name? They call it the Influence Index. Your label, couple other major corporations, some kind of consortium thing they set up in the mid-90s. They're running behavioral prediction models on high-profile artists, trying to figure out what makes you tick, what makes you successful, break it all down into quantifiable data they can replicate with other artists. The words made Mariah physically sick, but she kept her face neutral, kept pushing. Why would they do that? To manufacture it. Think about it, Mariah. If they can predict how you'll respond to pressure, how you create under stress, map your entire decision-making process, they can apply those same patterns to other artists, shape them, mold them into more controllable versions of what you are naturally. It's like trying to reverse engineer genius so they can mass produce it. And the intervention protocols I found in the contracts? The manager looked surprised. She dug that deep found language most artists would never notice buried in page 47 of standard agreements. When subjects deviate from projected patterns, when you start doing things that don't fit their models or threaten their investment, they course correct. You remember that breakdown you had in 2001? The one that derailed your whole career for months? Mariah remembered. The exhaustion, the pressure, everyone saying she'd lost it. That wasn't random bad luck or burnout. You were making creative choices they couldn't control, getting too independent, threatening to leave. The intervention brought you back to center, back to making the music that fit their projections and their profit margins. Rage built in Mariah's chest, cold and calculated, the kind that didn't explode but burned steady and dangerous. Why are you telling me this? What's your angle here? The manager met her eyes, and for the first time, Mariah saw something real there. Not the corporate negotiator, but an actual person with actual guilt. Because I'm out. I took their money for 4 years, did what they asked, helped them build the cage around you and dozens of other artists, but I'm done. Can't do it anymore. So you developed a conscience? Mariah said it with enough sarcasm to sting, to make it clear she wasn't impressed by late-stage morality. Something like that. Look, I've got kids now, and the thought of them growing up in an industry where this is normalized, where everyone's being monitored and manipulated and nobody knows, where art gets reduced to data points and algorithms, I can't be part of that anymore. He stood, moved to a desk in the corner, pulled out a USB drive from a locked drawer with a key he wore on a chain around his neck. Everything's on here. Internal memos, algorithm specifications, intervention logs for your case, and 50 others. Names, dates, outcomes, financial projections. Enough to bury the whole program if you know how to use it. Mariah took the drive, felt the weight of it. What happens to you? I disappear. Got a plan, been working on it for months. New identity, different city, offshore accounts they can't touch. But you've got the platform, the credibility, the resources to actually do something with this. The manager walked her to the door. One more thing, and this is important. Don't try to negotiate with them. Don't trust lawyers to handle it through normal channels. They'll tie you up in legal proceedings for years, bleed you dry, make you irrelevant before it ever sees a courtroom. You need to force their hand, make them react instead of plan, catch them when they're vulnerable. Mariah paused at the door. That text I got at 2:47 a.m., the surveillance footage, that was you. The manager's expression didn't change. I can't confirm that. But whoever sent it, they're on your side, even if you never find out who. Was that a yes or a no? Mariah couldn't tell, but something in the manager's eyes suggested there were layers here she wasn't seeing. Maybe other people involved, maybe other players in this game beyond just the label and their surveillance program. 3 days reviewing the USB files, prediction models reducing her to data points, notes on interventions. Subject responded to health crisis with increased commercial output. That 2001 breakdown wasn't random. They'd pushed her to it to measure how it affected her work. 50 other artists monitored, all unaware. But anger was clarifying. Going to the press now, they'd claim docs were fake. She needed leverage to corner them completely. She called her lawyer, set up a meeting with the label, Saturday afternoon, conference room at their headquarters. Tell them I'm ready to sign their new agreement. Mariah, we haven't even reviewed what they're asking for. I know. Trust me on this. This feels like a trap. It is, just not the one they're expecting. Saturday came cold and gray, typical New York winter. The label headquarters building was all glass and steel. designed to intimidate, to remind you that you were small and they were empire. Mariah walked through the lobby with her lawyer beside her, neither of them speaking, both knowing this meeting would determine everything. The conference room was on the 43rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city spread out below like a game board. 3 VPs waited, arranged on one side of a long mahogany table, their lawyers flanking them like soldiers. The oldest VP, silver-haired guy in his 60s who probably hadn't listened to a pop album since Madonna's first record, stood to shake hands. "Mariah, so glad you could make it. I think we can clear up this misunderstanding quickly and get everyone back to making music, which is what we all want, right?" The smile was practiced, the tone patronizing, like he was talking to a child who'd thrown a tantrum and was now ready to behave. Mariah didn't smile back, just took her seat, leather portfolio in front of her. The VP sat down, gestured to one of his lawyers who slid a thick document across the table. "This is the amended agreement we discussed on the phone. Very fair terms, really. Addresses all the concerns your lawyer raised about the monitoring clauses by clarifying their scope and purpose. Everything's above board. Standard industry practice that's been happening for years without issue. We're just making it explicit now to avoid any future confusion." Mariah didn't touch the document, didn't even look at it. Instead, she opened her portfolio slowly, deliberately, pulling out a single sheet of paper and placing it face up on the table. "This is the Influence Index Program Overview. Your names are right here as program administrators. Case numbers for every artist you've been monitoring since 1994. Budget allocations for intervention protocols. Everything you just tried to spin as standard industry practice is detailed here, as systematic surveillance and behavioral manipulation." The room temperature seemed to drop. The 3 VPs looked at the paper, looked at each other, looked at their lawyers. The silver-haired one tried to recover first. "I don't know where you got that document, but those are internal research materials taken out of context. Completely legal under the agreements artists signed, including you." "Maybe," Mariah said, voice calm but carrying an edge that made people pay attention. "But I don't think the 50 other artists in your program are going to see it that way when they find out. I don't think the media is going to care about your legal interpretations when they hear about the intervention protocols. And I really don't think your shareholders are going to appreciate explaining systematic surveillance to congressional committees." She let that sink in, watched the VPs exchange glances, watched their lawyers lean in to whisper frantically. "I've got everything," Mariah continued. "Every file from your servers. Prediction models, behavioral analyses, intervention logs with dates and outcomes. I know about the 2001 protocol that pushed me to breaking. I know about the manufactured controversies. I know about every time you manipulated my life to generate data points for your algorithms." The younger VP, guy in his 40s trying to act tough, leaned forward. "Even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not conceding that it is, you signed contracts giving us permission for this research. You can threaten to go public, but you'll destroy your own career in the process. Nobody wants to work with an artist who leaks confidential business information." Mariah smiled, and it wasn't friendly. "See, that's where you're wrong. I'm not threatening to leak anything. I'm telling you what happens if you don't shut this program down in the next 72 hours. Every file I have goes to the New York Times, Washington Post, Rolling Stone, every outlet that matters. I'll hold a press conference where I explain in detail how you've been treating artists like lab rats. I'll contact every artist in your program personally and tell them to check their own contracts. And then I'll sit back and watch your company burn." "You'll be violating your NDA," the 3rd VP said, older woman who'd been quiet until now. "We'll sue you for everything you have." "Good luck with that," Mariah shot back. "You really want to be in court explaining the influence index to a jury? You want discovery where my lawyers get to subpoena every internal communication about the program? Because I'll drag it out for years, make it as public and ugly as possible. And even if you win eventually, even if you bankrupt me, the damage to your reputation will be permanent." The silver-haired VP held up a hand, silencing his colleagues. "Let's say, hypothetically, we were willing to discuss shutting down this research program you're describing. What exactly are you asking for?" "3 things," Mariah said, ticking them off on her fingers. 1, you terminate every contract I have with this label. Immediately, no strings, no restrictions. 2, you pay me actual earnings from the past 5 years, not the adjusted numbers you've been feeding me. And I know there's a difference because I've seen the real revenue reports in your files. 3, you shut down the influence index completely. Destroy all data, all algorithms, all research materials, and you never run anything like it again." "That's absurd," the younger VP said. "You're asking us to give up years of research and development, millions of dollars in investment. I'm asking you to stop treating human beings like they're products you can optimize," Mariah interrupted. "And I'm giving you a way to do it quietly with dignity, without the whole world knowing what you've been doing. That's more generous than you deserve." The VPs asked for privacy, moved to an adjoining office visible through glass, made phone calls, calculated their options. 25 minutes later, they returned. "We're prepared to offer contract termination, pending 6-month transition." 1 month maximum, Mariah cut in. "Try again." The VP's jaw tightened. "Fine, 1 month. We'll audit the earnings through third-party arbitration." "No arbitration. You pay me the difference in full within 30 days or I release everything." "That's not reasonable." "I'm not interested in reasonable. You've been stealing from me for years. Pay me what you owe." The woman VP leaned forward. "And the program? You're asking us to destroy years of proprietary research. You've got 72 hours. 3 days from now, either the influence index is dead and you can prove it, or I start calling journalists. What stops you from going public anyway after we pay you?" Mariah pulled out a second document. "Mutual NDA. I stay quiet, you shut down. But if you restart under a different name, every file I have goes public." They conferred again, came back with tight voices. 1 month transition. Full earnings within 30 days. Program shutdown in 72 hours with documentation. Mutual NDA effective immediately. One more thing. Every artist in the program gets notified, gets option to terminate the monitoring clauses. Absolutely not. Then we don't have a deal. More consultation. 45 days for artist notification. 30. 45 is final. Mariah looked at her lawyer, got a nod. Fine. Papers were drawn up, reviewed, signed. Hands were shaken with zero warmth, just legal formality. As Mariah walked out of that building into the gray afternoon, she felt something close to victory, but not quite. Because winning meant she'd had to fight in the first place, meant years of her life had been stolen that she'd never get back. But she'd won, and that mattered, that counted for something. The next month, Mariah verified compliance obsessively. Forensic analysts confirmed terminations were real. When docs came through and the payment cleared, 7 figures more than expected, she felt relief mixed with responsibility she hadn't asked for. 2 weeks in, an artist called. "Mariah, I got this weird letter from the label about monitoring provisions in my contract. You know anything about that?" "Yeah. Get a lawyer you trust and have them audit everything you've ever signed. Check for language about behavioral monitoring, data collection, intervention protocols." Similar calls came in over the following weeks. Artists realizing they'd been subjects in an experiment they never consented to, looking to Mariah for guidance. 3 months later, another artist called. "They lied to us. The program never stopped, they just moved it, renamed it. My people found evidence they're still running surveillance on at least 20 artists right now." Ice flooded Mariah's veins. "You're sure?" "Positive. Different company name, but same algorithms, same personnel, just transferred. They spun it off to technically comply with your agreement, but it's the same program." She called her lawyer. "Remember those files we've been holding as insurance? Time to use them." "Mariah, they'll sue you for violating the NDA. Legal fees could bankrupt you." "I know. Do it anyway." The story broke on a Thursday in June. By afternoon, congressional investigations announced. By Monday, the VPs resigned. Label's stock dropped 30%. One interview. "Why risk everything?" "Because someone sent me a message at 2:47 a.m. that woke me up. Because staying quiet would have made me complicit." The quote became a rallying cry. Lawsuits proceeded. Regulations passed. The VPs faced criminal charges. The influence index died. And Mariah? She kept making music on her own terms, through her own label built with people she trusted. The victory had cost her. Legal fees, stress, paranoia that never fully went away. But she'd proven artists didn't have to accept exploitation as the price of success. Her label became a model. Transparent contracts, fair profit sharing, real creative freedom. Other artists took notice. Some joined her. Others used her structure to negotiate better terms. The industry was forced to evolve. Months after everything had settled, After the lawsuits reached settlements and the regulations passed and the industry slowly started pretending it had always cared about artist rights, Mariah's phone buzzed late one night. Blocked number. Her first instinct was to delete it. Too many memories of that first message at 2:47 a.m., but something made her open it. 2 words, thank you. She stared at it. Tried calling back. Disconnected. Tried tracing. Hidden. Her mind went back to the business manager's house. That moment at the door when Mariah had asked about the 2:47 a.m. text. The manager had said, I can't confirm that, but his eyes had held something, recognition maybe, or guilt, or both. And that detail about the surveillance footage angles, the ones Mariah had never seen before, those would have required deep system access. The kind of business manager negotiating those contracts would definitely have. Plus the timing matched. The manager had mentioned he'd been working on his exit plan for months. And that first text came through March, right when the manager would have been gathering his own evidence for disappearing. The text had said, check your contracts, not check the surveillance or check the files. And who would naturally think of contracts first, except someone who'd spent years negotiating them? But Mariah would never know for certain. The manager had chosen his words carefully, neither confirming nor denying, leaving just enough ambiguity that it could have been someone else. Maybe that was intentional, plausible deniability in case things went wrong. Or maybe Mariah was seeing patterns that weren't there, connecting dots that didn't actually connect. Whoever it was, they'd changed everything with one text, woken her up, given her tools to break free, trusted her to act. That anonymous conscience had rippled outward, touching dozens of artists, reforming practices, bringing down a program that had operated in shadows for decades. One person acting alone had started an avalanche. Mariah saved that final thank you message, screenshotted it before it could delete itself like the others, kept it as a reminder. Not of who sent it, because she'd probably never know, but of what it represented. The idea that anyone, anywhere could make a difference if they chose to act instead of accepting corruption as inevitable. The story didn't end with perfect justice. Some of the people responsible got away with light consequences. Some damage couldn't be undone. Some artists never fully recovered from years of manipulation. But it ended with something more important than justice. It ended with change. With artists understanding they had power. With industry executives knowing they were being watched now. With systems of exploitation exposed and forced to evolve. And it ended with Mariah standing independent for the first time. Truly free. Fully in control. Owing nothing except maybe that anonymous person who'd warned her and trusted her to act. She'd learned the most important lesson. Trust nobody automatically. Question everything, read every word, including fine print. Pay attention to the cage before the bars become too strong. Because when you stop paying attention, when you decide it's easier to just go along, that's when they slip the leash around your neck. And by the time you feel it tightening, it's almost too late. Almost, but not quite. Never quite. There's always a chance, always a moment to choose fight instead of submit, where freedom matters more than security, where you can risk everything for the chance to actually own it. That choice, that refusal to accept control, that's what separates artists who survive with souls intact from cautionary tales about trusting the wrong people with your career, your life, your freedom. Mariah had made her choice, fought her battle, won her freedom, and every day since she'd worked to make sure other artists knew they had the same power to fight back. The surveillance was over. The influence index was dead. The cage was broken. She was finally truly free.